Kathy Livingston, who's the president and owner of Senior Helpers. Kathy, come on up. Erin Brennan, Senior Program Director of Self-Help. Erin, come on up. And Joe Klein, attorney Joe Klein, CPA, a partner in the law firm of Krasinski and Klein. Joe, come on up. They are going to be discussing different types of long-term care that are available, their benefits, the options, and what might be the best option for all of you. As they hop up on the seats. If you don't fall off, you're going to stand. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? Please welcome Claire, Lindsay, Kathy, Erin, and Jennifer. Before you get started, Claire, I'm personally delivering you a chair. It's about time I did something with Claire, right? There you go. You're very welcome.
I know the way my left runs. Me?
Claire, start with you. Okay.
I didn't hear what you said.
We're going to start with you. Open discussion. Long-term care benefits. What's the best option for individuals that are here today? What are the options?
Okay, I'm going to start with what's near and dear to my heart, and that would be assisted living. But I think the journey begins long before that for many of you, and by no means by saying that as soon as somebody is diagnosed with any form of cognitive impairment, pick up the phone and call us. Of course you can. But we tend to think of ourselves as an answer along the way, the path, and I think after you hear from all of us, I'll let them talk, you'll start to see that most people turn to assisted living. When I say assisted living, our community has been in business for about 20 years. It started long before I got there, in the late 90s, 99 perhaps, and it was opened as all memory care, which fascinates. Go. And I was drawn to it. Something kept pulling at me. And I think it was the idea that it was all memory care. Because I realized that all the other communities I worked with would have 100 beds assisted living and 20 memory care. And I think I realized that I never really focused all my energy on the memory care. And it's been a beautiful journey for me. I'm there 12 years. The thing about our community is we embrace the whole family. And something that the family was saying before is, I'm still here. Those are the two things that are most important for me. A resident may change in behaviors and things like that, but the core of a person doesn't change. And it's not just personal care. We want to go ahead? Home care, or what do you think?
Okay, I'm Erin Brennan. I work for Self-Help Community Services. I've been with Self-Help for 19 years. And we're actually in our 82nd year. Those of you who don't know what Self-Help is, it's a social service organization. And we do home care, we do senior centers, we do housing, case management, community guardianship, and we also do social adult day. So that's what I'm here to talk about today. So I run a social adult day program in Bayside, Queens. It is the only one that Self-Help has. As I mentioned, Self-Help has a lot of programs, and they seem to be senior centers. We have 5, housing we have, I think, 10 or 12 at this point. but for Social Adult Day, we only have the one program, and it's located in Bayside, Queens. As we listened earlier, when you talk about now you've been diagnosed, and what do you do? I love the idea of assisted living. I think that's always a great option as well. But as we all know, that's not always an option for everybody.
Right.
I want to keep my loved one home. I want them to live at home. I want them, to be around the family, and I want to take care of them. I've always promised them I would take care of them. I would never put them somewhere. So a program like the program that I run, which is a Social Adult Day program, I don't have any doctors or nurses or therapists on staff, strictly socialization and recreation. So we run a program. It's open 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We do provide transportation, or a loved one can bring their loved one to the program. But what we do is we do activities to promote both cognitive and physical stimulation. So they're getting a mix of both. So when I say cognitive stimulation, what do I mean? So we do current events, we do reality orientation, we do trivia. We have a DACM program, which is a brain fitness program. It's a computer program, which gives them an opportunity to do some math, geography, and being a partner with AFA and being a member of AFA, I was lucky enough to get a grant several years ago to try the DACM out, and it has been successful, and we have been able to sustain that program at the center. But in addition to that, we also do some physical activity. We do the Nintendo Wii. I'm sure you've all heard of that. We're probably on to, what's the new one now? Xbox. But we do Nintendo Wii. We bowl. We just recently had a bowling tournament. Everybody got trophies when they were finished. We do basketball. We do big bag throw. We do fall prevention exercises. So we're always keeping them moving. The program is a secured environment. So the program's actually located in the same building as our senior center, which is a nice mix for some people because my caregivers are going to the senior center and they're socializing with people. And the person that has the memory impairment is in our program. We have our own designated area. We don't leave that area. We flip the room around depending on the programs we're doing. We get a nice hot nutritious lunch that is brought down from the senior center that is actually approved by a nutritionist through the Department for the Aging, so it does meet the 1/3 RDA, so they're getting a nice healthy meal as well. But the main purpose of our program is actually twofold. It's one, to give that person with the memory impairment an opportunity to socialize, be around people that are like them, and be able to socialize. But it also gives the caregiver a well-needed break. And that's when we encourage our caregivers to go and do the things that they can't do when their loved one is home with them. So whether it's taking a nap, having lunch with a friend, getting your hair cut, doing some grocery shopping, all those things is what we encourage them to do when their loved one is at our program. It gives them peace of mind knowing they're in a safe, secure environment, that nothing is going to happen to them. I hear sometimes, well, I leave him home, I can leave him home for an hour by himself. And he's okay for an hour, but after that, but knowing that they're in a safe, secure environment, I just enrolled a person this week. He's actually early stage. He's only 63 years old, so it's very, very hard on the family because they didn't expect this so early on. He had to stop working. And the wife joined the senior center, and she went to the art class. And every time I walk in, how's he doing? How's he doing? I said, he's doing great. He's happy. The dentist just called, I need to run over to the dentist. Do you think I can do it? Go to the dentist. If you need to go, go. That's why he's here, for us to take care of him. So you can do those things that you need to do. So, as I mentioned, assisted living is a wonderful option. It's not an option for everybody. So leaving somebody at home, and one of the things that Dr. Davies said, and also Team Harrison said, is the fact about the socialization piece, how extremely important it is. A lot of our members have home care, and there is a need for that as well, because it's not just 10 to 3, I'm the only break that the family gets. A lot of our families have home care as well, but the piece of it is, to stick somebody in front of the TV is not the answer. There's no socialization, there's no interaction. I've also had families say to me, if I have a home health aide, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. You only can have so much interaction between two people. So I advocate for the socialization piece. I just think it's extremely important. It gives the break, and it also encourages them to use their mind, because they're totally socializing all the time. They're keeping their minds active, and then when they go home, the beauty of going home then is the fact that they're relaxed and they're easier to care for when they get home. Again, giving the caregiver the opportunity to keep them living at home for a longer period of time. And that's a lot of what our caregivers we hear is that I'd like to keep them home as long as I possibly can. And we help them do that. And I'm not the only program that does Social Adult Day. If you look around the city, there are other Social Adult Day programs, and I can probably guarantee you that they're probably doing very similar things that I'm doing. So if that's something you're looking at, I would strongly suggest looking at as an option. None of us are the sole answer here. It's an option and something you should strongly consider.
Hi, my name is Joe Klein. I'm an attorney, elder law attorney. Just to introduce myself, I'm a partner in the law firm of Korsinski and Klein here in New York City. We do estate planning, long-term care planning, guardianships, and basically any legal issues that pertain to elderly people. Anytime somebody is diagnosed with a disease, or really anybody middle-aged or over, has to be concerned about estate planning and long-term care planning. Estate planning, if somebody is incapacitated, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, are very important documents to have. A power of attorney is if somebody is incapacitated, you appoint an agent who can handle things for you, whether it's banking, transactions, dealing with Medicaid, Medicare, signing documents, anything. A power of attorney is important to have so somebody can quickly step in. If you don't have a power of attorney and something has to get done for you and you're incapacitated, or if somebody has dementia and can handle things, then a guardianship is needed, but that is a lot more costly, and you would have to go through a whole court process until the court will allow somebody to act in your place. A healthcare proxy is similar to a power of attorney, but it allows you to appoint an agent to handle healthcare issues for you. Power of attorney is for financial matters, healthcare proxy is for healthcare issues. So you could appoint an agent who could step in if you can't handle issues on yourself, whether it's switching from NYU to Columbia or whether it's dealing with end-of-life issues. It's very important to have an agent who could step in and handle things for you. There's also, along with the healthcare proxy, is a document called the living will, where if somebody does not simply want to name an agent and who could do whatever he or she wants, you want to give very clear directions that the agent must follow, but that the hospital must follow. The living will can have all that information in there, whether somebody is in a state that they're not enjoying life anymore, they're in coma, any issues like that. You can give very clear directions in a living will to make sure that you don't end up in a state that you don't want to be when you're incapacitated. So, along with the documents that are important if you're incapacitated, having a will and an estate plan is important. That really applies to everybody, that eventually we will pass away, and you want to make sure your assets end up with the right people. If somebody is diagnosed with a disease, this issue becomes even more important as someone might feel closer to that stage. It's very important to avoid fights, avoid arguments. If documents are very clear and have all the detail in it, and you spend a lot of time on it, reviewing, relying very carefully. These are custom crafted documents. A will isn't something you should just print off the internet. It's very important to have very clear directions. Some people might have children who are disabled. Some people might have children who have financial problems, marriage problems. You want to make sure that even if you do leave it to family members, it goes to them in a asset-protected way. Or even if somebody does not have family members and want to give it to charity, you have to make sure that these documents have no ambiguity and are crystal clear. Now, Long-term care planning, very important. It's not only legal documents, but it's also financial planning. There's 3 ways to pay for it. Long-term care is home care, assisted living, or a nursing home. You can either have long-term care insurance, you can pay out of pocket, or some people who have less money, there's an option of putting your assets into a trust, giving them away, and qualifying to have Medicaid pay for a lot of this long-term care. Now, long-term care insurance, is not something you can wait for until you're diagnosed. You don't qualify, but it's something that a lot of people could do earlier on. And setting up your assets to qualify for Medicaid, in New York actually has the best laws in the country for that. If somebody needs home care, you can basically transfer your assets to a trust, give them away, and qualify to have Medicaid pay for home care within a month or 2. So there's obviously a lot more detail, but that really can be done. Nursing home care, there's a 5-year waiting period until, if you transfer your assets, until your assets are protected and Medicaid could pay. So it's not something that you should wait for the last minute. It's something that you could do in advance. But even with that, long-term care insurance is really better. If you could afford it, it's much better to have. So we have a table out there. If anybody has questions afterwards, we'll be available to answer.
Hi, everybody. We're going to close to lunch because I want to make sure everybody's awake. So I'm going to ask you all a few questions first, right? We're all a little bit different in how we live our lives. And it's no different once we have a diagnosis of dementia. That's why there's not one answer. So how many of us in this room actually live in New York City? Can I get a show of hands? All right. How many are from Long Island? All right. How many are from Jersey? All right. Okay. So how many of us live in homes with yards? How many of us live in apartments? There's a reason that you make these decisions because it's your preferences. And when we get a diagnosis, if it is dementia, our preferences don't change. We don't become a different person, right? We're still either talkative or not talkative. I clearly am not talkative, right? So I think that what's wonderful about the people that are sitting up here is that you're really able to look at different options to explore and experience dementia as it's appropriate for you and your family, because we don't just experience this ourselves, right? So who am I? Who am I to talk to? I'm Kathy Livingston. We are an international home care agency. I happen to be the owner here in New York City. And I think what's really fantastic, Claire said, sometimes assisted living is not where somebody first makes a call. Maybe sometimes it is. I think that we often in home care get an earlier call for a family. And I think what's important is to say, what's good for me today and what's good for me tomorrow? That might look different. And what's good for me in 5 years, hopefully in 10 years. Let's knock on wood and say 20 years, right? And what does that look like as I kind of go through my experience of dementia as a family, as a support system? And when I say family, it might be my neighbor Sally who lived next to me 20 years in Harlem, right? I don't have any kids. So that's where you all define. And I think when we take calls as senior helpers, we try to say, often the call comes in because something has happened. A fall, so-and-so's wandering, not taking medications. So there's a physical need that prompts this phone call to say, hey, we need to change for safety. But that's not enough. That's not all that dementia is. So we say, when you're doing the planning that might involve any of these wonderful people up here, you need to look at 4 components. Okay, so what are those 4 components? We say, sit down and say, I need to plan short-term and long-term for my family member's health. So physically, what does this person need? Are they having difficulty on steps? What are the medications? Would physical therapy be appropriate? What does this look like? Socially, what was this person's personality? I don't want to force them to sit in a room and paint because I think it's going to engage them. If they don't like to paint, never did. What do they like to do? How do I engage them? How do I meet them where they're at? What's their personality? How do they feel about home care? Guess what happens if somebody says, no, I don't need it, I don't need it, I don't need it. You're like, yeah, you do, yeah, you do, yeah, you do. We're going to have somebody show up at your house and they're a stranger. How do we think that goes? So, not so well. So how do we overcome that? So health, social, and then family. What a big, important factor is the husband involved, right? Are we dealing with a couple who says, you know, now this is my personal space too. What does that look like as dementia progresses? I have 2 kids, a brother and a sister. They don't really talk, but they're both involved. So how do we look at the family needs? And then last is financial, right? What are my personal assets? What can I afford? How do I afford that? And how long can I afford it? And do some planning to ensure that in the long run, my plans, both today, tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, meet my short-term plans and my long-term plans. So that's kind of how Senior Helpers approaches it. We are your typical home care agency, and I think what you need to find when you seek out a home care agency is a home office and a contact that's going to help you with those plans as you bring up concerns, as they go out and do visits and they see concerns, so that everybody experiences this together, but there's no crisis. That's really what you want to avoid. We want to avoid the crisis, and we want to make sure that we're planning. So that's how we try to approach our home care, and then obviously incorporate other services, day programs. Of the home is where the person lives. So assisted livings is just as much somebody's home as where they might have lived for 40 years. So I think home care is a good start to say, how do we work through this together and get all of the pieces of the puzzle as appropriate to where you're at with dementia and where you are as a human being with different personalities. So.
Kathy, I'm over here. Kathy, I'm over here.
Okay, all right. There's a lot of lines. I think I might fall off the chair. Okay.
Pull up a chair. For you and Claire in different situations, home and a residence, how do you deal with the caregiver guilt? Kathy, I'm going to leave the house. I'm sure there's a lot of guilt leaving the house. Claire, on your end, you can answer the second. Claire, I'll go to an example when we had our conference in Florida last year, sitting next to an individual who was bringing his dad to an assisted living the next day. I called him the day after that, and he said, I have tremendous guilt. He goes, I know I'm doing the right thing, but my father turned and asked me when I left, what did I do wrong? So, Kathy, Claire, hold that thought. Kathy, is there guilt, concern from a caregiver leaving the house with somebody else in there?
Of course, right? Because there's this, I'm their family member, I'm their wife often, or I'm the husband. How can I let somebody else bathe them? And, you know, again, I go to personalities and relationships, right? And so everybody's a little bit different, okay? And I think that you might feel differently each day. And so we have, you know, a social worker, a case manager, a nurse, and I don't think you necessarily need those certifications. I think you need compassion to help that family member walk through. You need to take care of yourself too. And that's why we said one of those 4 components is family, because guess what? If wife, son, husband, niece, whomever it is, gets burnt out, how much help are you? You're the foundation of the house. If you get a crack, everything starts to crumble a little bit. So I think when you pick your care partners and you're putting together your team, because that's what we are all here for, right? Is how do we navigate this together? That we get the people that we feel the most comfortable speaking to about those feelings. You should have a connection. It shouldn't just be like a clinical, okay, they're a good rate, we're good, we got a good rate, they can do my hours, I like the lady that comes. You need to know that you have a partner in the long run that will help you when you have those feelings. And I think that makes a massive difference. And also, by the way, I also think it's massively okay to say, you know, this is my husband, here's my boundaries. It helps identify when there might be a trigger to need more help or to move to an assisted living or to go to an adult day during the day. So guilt is very real. And I think it's real not, Chuck, just when somebody might be having a professional step in to provide care, but also we know people change as they experience this. And so I think sometimes there's just guilt and maybe the past. I wish I could have been a better spouse. I should have done this. if I'd only spent more time, you know, when he said that thing, I thought something was wrong. So I think the guilt part of this, as a family, you know, as part of the family needs to be addressed. And you should have people around you helping provide care that you feel comfortable talking to. Or, if you're not a talker, I don't know what that's like, if you're not a talker, that will ask you the questions that you need somebody to ask you.
Thank you, thank you. Lindsay, Claire, different situation now, we're giving you our loved one.
Okay.
And I reference back to what I told you a few minutes ago about the gentleman we met in Florida, when his father said to him, "What did I do wrong?" It was unbearable for him to just hear that.
I think, you know, for us in particular, our residents understand that this is very much crisis driven, it's devastation, it's stress, and it's heartbreak. And like Claire said, we're not usually the first stop. So our family members have been through a long process, and now it's us holding their hand through the next step. And part of what we do is before anybody moves in, we have family meetings. Without the person with dementia, it's very important to form a bond with them, to find out, okay, what does your husband like? Does he like his coffee in the morning black and no breakfast? Or what are the personal touches that can make them feel comfortable, but also allow the family to know that they are not just dumping them. You know, they really have no other alternatives at this point, and maybe they did do everything that they could do. Home care did work, but now it's not working anymore. Or maybe, you know, they just need more support, or maybe they need more socialization. So I think for the family, it's really important for us as a community to welcome them in from the get-go and form that bond with them and reassure them that, yes, feeling guilt is normal, but when you look at the big picture of things, this is the right next step, and this is how we're going to continue to help you through this process. We also try to refer people to outside places for extra support. Lots of great support groups that you know, people can take advantage of. They can hear other people who have been through this and form bonds. And I think too, having families get together, it's really important. They can share those experiences. So I think starting a relationship from the very beginning and reassuring them that everything that they've done to this point has been what was best for that individual, and now moving forward, we're going to help them through that process.
Thank you very much. So, self-help, those day programs. You experience the same situations of individuals with the reluctance to leave their loved ones there?
Yes, sometimes we have a lot of people, especially couples, who have separation anxiety. You know, they've been married 60 years, they spent all their free time together, and now you're leaving me here. Why are you leaving me here? You're not coming back for me. I always assure all my new participants, I have no pillows, no blankets, no cots, nobody spends the night. Everybody goes home at the end of the day. But we reassure them that if your wife needs a break, she's going to take a break. You're going to participate, you're going to make some new friends, and then the time you get to spend together, when you come back together, would be even more special. So we try to just kind of ease their anxiety and their concerns, and that it's really what's best for the loved one and the caregiver is what we try to, you know, to make them understand. I've gone through assessments, because we do a whole assessment process. Similar to what you do, is we ask all about the family. I ask about children, grandchildren, pets, names, everything. We know everything about this because we incorporate that into our program. So I'll ask, how's Betty doing today? You know, or if I know a child's got married, I'll ask about it. You know, and they'll, you know, they remember these things. So, you know, it's important to know a lot more about them than just they come to the program and they go home. So we really get to know our clients. But I can do a whole assessment, and then I'll say, okay, so when would you like them to start? Well, we're going to go home and I'm going to ask him what he thinks. Well, the reason he's coming to a program like this is possibly because he's got impaired judgment. He cannot make his own decisions, you know. So I always try to explain that you let them know we're going to give this a try. Let's try it for 2 weeks and see what happens. If you don't like it after 2 weeks, you don't have to. I had a gentleman who came, every day, he started in the spring, and he would wear a spring jacket. And he'd come to program, and we'd say, okay, would you like me to take your jacket? I'll hang it in the closet. He wore his jacket, and it was a light jacket, so it wasn't a huge deal, every day. And then, like after about 4 weeks, he came in, and he took his jacket off, and he gave it to the staff to hang in the closet. And the son said that he was then waiting by the window on days that he was supposed to come to program, waiting for them. So sometimes you just have to let them, you know, kind of ease into it, not rush it, and let them work through their feelings, and be there to support them and let them know this is really what's going to be best for you and best for the long term. You know, going forward.
Thanks. Joe, long-term care, you're an attorney or a CPA, if somebody approaches you, I'm not getting old, what do I need long-term care for? I have to go to a Kaczynski and Klein, in a law firm? I mean, don't you have people, aren't people fearful, just even approaching the legal advice, the accounting advice, the financial advice, when they hear the word, I need long-term care?
People are fearful until they meet people or have friends who have gotten sick, and that's what really scares them. And that's when they show up. You know, people really could deal with these issues when they're younger and get long-term care insurance when they're in their 40s and their 50s, but a lot of people don't, and they should, but they're busy with their life, and when they're in their higher 60s and low 70s, that's when they wake up and they know people and they start dealing with this. At that point, it might be too late to get long-term care insurance, and then people really have to start looking at their assets and making a budget and seeing what they could afford and what they can't afford, and if they plan to pay for long-term care out of pocket, they should, and if they don't have a lot of money, they should cut other things out of their budget. And the option, New York has, as I mentioned before, has that great option of being able to transfer your assets to a trust, to gift it away, and qualify for Medicaid, to have Medicaid pay for long-term care and home care and nursing home care. Where if that's done, you know, we try to get a very personalized plan that it won't impact your lifestyle too much, but I think if somebody has their finances in order, it would make them a lot more relaxed and a lot less stressed about the money. You know, while we're talking about dealing with health issues, sometimes the finances can stress out the family more than the health issues, when they're worried about how will we pay for it and who will pay for it.
So we have a panel here that could provide the greatest example of recreational programs, home care, assisted living residence. Joe, you have a large crowd here today. What's the mental checklist when somebody goes home and they think about legal and financial viewpoints when they go home today, what they should be doing? How do they gather their thoughts and not necessarily put their life all together financially and legally, but what's the checklist that they need to be thinking about?
Well, I think people first should educate themselves about what they might need, what's available to them, and what they need. People can go, there are lawyers all over New York City who do it as well. You can go for a personalized consultation, where you tell the lawyer about your family, you tell the lawyer about your assets, about your lifestyles, and the lawyer will give you a very specific plan about the documents you need and work over your budget with you. Can you afford long-term care insurance? Can you afford to pay out of pocket? Do you need to do Medicaid planning? I think educating yourself is step one. People get very nervous, oh, there's all these documents, I don't know, trust, wills, revocable, irrevocable, a lot of information. You might read articles about this. It's just a lot of information, and you might not be lawyers, you might not be accountants, you might not be educated in these things. It's very overwhelming. So step one, go to a professional, get yourself educated, very customized to you, so that you can walk out of the lawyer's office after a 2 to 3 hour meeting and at least know what you need and know what can be done about it. Again, the power of attorney, healthcare proxy is critical, really for anybody. If somebody's, it incapacitated and just, you wake up one day and it happens, you want to be set up with that. And the will and the trusts are important as well.
So everybody, ladies and gentlemen, you see your options right here. Legally, you get a little taste of what needs to be done financially. Does anybody have any questions for the panel? We do. Can you just wait for the mic? Al will be there in a minute. Al, right here as well.
I work for an independent living facility in Flushing area, and there are 2 residents who have a history. During mealtime, will come down and say, I haven't eaten. At first, dietary did not know how to handle the situation. They would say, sign this document showing that you ate. And then they say, okay, we're going to take a picture with you showing that you ate already. And then someone said, let's take a video. Therefore, they can show that what she had on. And then we're keeping. So finally, someone said, you know what? Just give her what she wants. So that way she can be satisfied. So would you say that's a great idea?
I think there's an element of when dementia is so uncontrollable, right? We lose control, and who really loves to say, oh, I have no control over my situation, or I have no control over the one person that I care about, or even for those of us that are care providers, we want to fix it, right? We want to make it so perfect and just right, and everybody's good and healthy. Sometimes you have to kind of let that go a little bit for quality of life, and pick and choose your battles, right?
I see that things like that happen in our community, and you have to be in the moment with that person. As you're saying, by saying to them, no, you ate, or here's a video, think about how you feel, about you. Nobody's listening, and feeling that they have inside. So perhaps, and I'm just guessing, have them sit down, offer them a salad. Many times, they will eat it. It's really not about the food, it's just about the internal feeling. And I think it's just playing along with where they are then. I think in letting them acknowledge how they feel. Maybe giving them a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or if they're still hungry. I often used to say to a person that no longer works for us a long, long time ago, how do you decide if somebody wants more food that they shouldn't get, that's not gonna work here? How many times at home do we get up during the night to have a snack or something like that? Maybe that particular person is still hungry or thirsty and doesn't know how to express themselves. So I think it's not about right and wrong. It's about learning to evolve with that person and to simplify your own life too. That it's a lot easier to figure out how to smooth it over than to always be that anxious person trying to say no. That's a terrible word for any of us to hear in the time we're born.
I think we had a question over here. Yes, ma'am. We'll bring you a mic. To your right now. Come to the right. Okay, go left.
Chuck, we don't listen to you.
I want to find out how soon can I apply for my husband's Medicaid? He's eligible for Medicaid, I'm not, but we file a combined income, we file together at the end of the year. He's 79 and 78, how soon can I apply for his Medicaid?
Being that they're married.
So your tax return has nothing to do with applying for Medicaid. In order to apply for Medicaid, there is an asset test and an income test for long-term care Medicaid. The asset test is basically, it applies to the person applying. So his assets can't be more than approximately $15,000. Retirement accounts are exempt in New York as an asset. You can have unlimited retirement accounts, but the non-retirement accounts, you have $15,000. You are allowed to have a residence that you live in, and that's also exempt. But if you keep that residence in your name, then after you pass away, benefit could file a claim against the state, or in the case of a nursing home, file a lien against the property. So most people, before they apply for Medicaid, they would transfer their house away to either a trust, to children, to family and friends. So home care, there's no look-back period. You could make these transfers and qualify almost immediately. With regard to income, just very briefly, you are allowed to have unlimited income and still qualify for Medicaid, but your income over $850 must be spent on you. That's what Medicaid requires. So if somebody has a large pension, and if somebody's 103 and has large pensions, it's not so easy to spend $8,000, $9,000 a month. So that's a little detail that has to be worked in.
But would she be able to keep her, like, half the money as the spouse? I think that's what.
So if let's say a husband applies for Medicaid, so technically, the wife can have unlimited assets with the husband applying for Medicaid and qualify for Medicaid. However, there's a law in New York that a spouse has to take care of a spouse. So Medicaid has the right to get reimbursed from the well spouse. And in the past couple of years, they have started doing that. So with regard to the law that Medicaid can try to get reimbursed from the well spouse can have up to approximately $115,000 of assets. So people have to be aware about how much the well spouse can have. And if the well spouse has more than that, there are ways that we could negotiate with Medicaid. We do negotiations all the time and work out deals. You know, if the well spouse has $200,000, then we say that because of hardship, the well spouse needs the money, and usually Medicaid is open to working out deals.
Last question.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. As we all know, dementia is a financial journey also. I have two parents with dementia. Please, if your loved one is a veteran, there is a program called Veterans Assistant in Aid, depending on your assets. And the veteran, the VA will help your loved one, whether he or she is at home or in assisted living. It's a wonderful program. It practically pays for my dad in assisted living, so that is another option for everybody. Please look into it and take care of our veterans.
Thank you. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our panel, and they are all members. Self-help, Kaczynski and Klein, Senior Helpers, and the 80th Street residents. They're all going to be here. They have tables. They're to visit. Please take the time and go visit them and learn more about their services. Thank you so much. Yes?
I just wanted to add one thing, is that, I mean, we're all here because I'm sure you're familiar with what AFA does, or you're learning about their services. We've been a member organization with AFA for several years, and the services that they provide are invaluable, the training services. Every one of my staff members is a certified dementia care partner, which has been done through AFA. And over the years, they have actually provided grants to our program, whether it's the Dakin grant to introduce a new program to our program to see how it goes, or a family respite grant to help assist some of our families to actually attend the program when there is a financial need. So I know you're probably very familiar with them, but I just want to let you know that being a member organization has been extremely supportive to our program, and Self-Help thanks you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. So before we break for lunch, which is going to be a working lunch, you're going to come back inside. Really proud to announce that, as was mentioned, part of our goal is giving back. Every year, we give back about $1 million a year in grants to our member organizations throughout the entire country, as well as funding research. You heard Dr. Davies from New York, all the way to Israel. We are funding a project at the Hadassah Medical Hospital in Jerusalem. Very proud of the work there. Dr. Jeff Cummings at the Cleveland Clinic, an affiliate in Las Vegas, the University of Penn, Emory University, and other facilities throughout the country. We're proud to be a part that someday we may have been part of finding a cure or better treatment. But one of our good partners is here as well, the Bristol, and AFA has had a long-standing partnership with them. Their support of our Educating America tour, our workshops. We do our educational workshops at many of their locations, memory screenings throughout the entire year. Their newest facility, right here in New York City, 305 West End, we are going to be sponsoring the Teal Room, which is a memory cafe. For more details on the West End, 305 West End, or the Bristols, please see them at their table. Earlier this year, the Bristol's recreation directors and residents worked together to create a panel for the AFA's Quilt to Remember program. Our Quilt to Remember program consists of hundreds of quilts that are in honor and memory. It's a living tribute to somebody's life. This quilt was designed and stitched by Janie Edwards and Lisa Gallo, again with the help of the recreational directors and the residents living at the Bristols. So everybody can turn to my right and look at the blue big curtain, but the black curtain in the middle. I'm really proud that we're going to be unveiling the Bristol's quilt right now. Rachel? You just have to pull it down. There you go. So you can imagine that each little panel inside had to be made, and then it had to be stitched together. Before you leave together today, take a look at 3 panels of there, and you'll see a little bit about somebody's life, either living or has lived with disease. Right now, it's the fun part, lunch. So we're going to take a quick break, 15-minute break. I just want to remind everybody we are offering the memory screens and hearing screens. It's a box lunch. Bring your lunch back, and we're going to continue on with our programs. The next workshop is strategies to avoid caregiver burnout. Thank you very much.